Hello, and welcome to my Challenge Mode BOFA No Prep Solo Guide. The point of this guide is to ensure consistent, no-death completions without prepping and without a twisted bow. This isn't a speed run, and certain strats will slow you down slightly in exchange for more food and or prayer. So we pre-vengeance at Arceus Altar, but this is not necessary. It is nice, however, to have that one vengeance for Tekton. I use Inquisitor, and I definitely use Thralls, very important, but you don't need Inquisitor. In fact, Bandos makes this strategy slightly safer because you only bring BCP and Face Guard without Tacits, opening a spot for another piece of Tekton food, and more importantly, you can pick up the Restore after Tekton for when Vanguards troll you and drop 0 Restore. I'll be mentioning strategies later on for mitigating this RNG occurrence in the Inquisitor setup. Now, I just opened up my gear, and you can take a look at it, maybe pause the video if needed, to copy the setup. So for Tekton, we drop an item, we pray Piety, we summon our melee Thrall, and then we spec Tekton twice. Now, I messed it up after my second spec, but I managed, you'll see right here, yeah, I went in too soon. I managed to save it though, and I took a little bit of extra damage. So just make sure to walk off Tekton like I do right here, and he will walk backwards if you did it correctly, and that allows you to swing one last Scythe hit at the end. Of course, this strategy is not required, or it's different if you have a Fortic weapon, but I don't. So also, the timing at which I do all these clicks is very crucial. The timing at which I start the fight, at which I click Tekton first, and the timing at which I hammer, and when he comes off his anvil. All these timings do matter. They allow me to do an extra hit at the end. It's not all that important, but if you want to do the maximum number of hits, you want to copy the strategy perfectly, except the little mistake I made at the start. And you can see here, I do the exact same thing. Walking off Tekton allows you to do an extra hit because he takes an extra tick walking backwards. You will often find yourself going further than taking longer than one anvil, sadly, even in full Inquisitors. Also, small detail, I don't vengeance on purpose while doing hammer hits so that I can keep my vengeance if I need to reset on 0 hammers. So, now that Tekton is dead, we drop, we drink our pre-pot stamina, we drink a bit of our restore that we get, drop the restore, and pick up the enhance. So crabs is kind of difficult to explain, and I actually messed it up, sadly, but this was a good run, so I kept it. You will see I misclicked my staff there, so I ran into the second crab instead, or the third crab, instead of dragging it. But the strategy is to put your staff on long ranged, go to those marked tiles at the Tekton door, and go to the one marked tile, the northern one. Enter the door, shoot your first crab from the marked tile, the blue one you will see in the east of the room, and then go to the correct tile, wait until the first crab is in place, and then you freeze that first crab. Then you click your staff again, which I messed up, attack the third crab, move to the blue tile to make sure the second crab won't unaggro, switch to the hammer, move back to the position, the second crab, you freeze it, you move to the final tile, and mage the second crab to turn it blue. So that's all of the steps required. I refroze the crab since I messed it up, which you don't need to do if you do it right. And the rest of the room is quite clear. And you can mage the crabs to let your Sang Staff heal you. You can mage the Scavenger after crabs is done just once for a potential heal, but beyond that is a waste of time. This is because you won't lose a tick if you mage attack, drag yourself into the Scavenger, but not really important. Then just equip your melee gear, you drop your overload and enhance, you can pick up the tinderbox and axe, equip the axe, drop the tinderbox, open the chest, do deposit all, exit the chest, and click a tree. So you can pick up your tinderbox after you get one chop. You can then move to further trees in between chops to make sure the closest tree survives. I did this and the second tree died, which is good. So the first tree, the closest tree, is still alive. Now, when it comes to chopping trees, I suggest two almost, pretty much full inventories. And then the third inventory, you can do two, three, maybe four chops. Doesn't matter too much. I always do three, no matter how big they are. Then once you're done with that and you deposit your third batch of logs, you can drop the tinderbox, but you want to keep your axe in about the bottom of your inventory. You really want it in the bottom so your inventory doesn't mess up when you take out your stuff. And then when you take out your stuff, rebank all the same items I banked. You should end up with about 8 spots if you have the same setup and if you re-equip your Dragon Warhammer. In Bandos, that will be 9 spots. Then you pick up your 2 potions that you dropped and get ready to hammer Ice Demon. Twice or just once if you were lucky and got a 1 anvil Tekton. Now, Thralls, I spawned one, but they don't really seem to hit more than one, so it's up to you to decide if you think summoning a Thrall is worth it. Now, Fortic Bofa is faster, but it doesn't allow you to flick Rigor like I'm doing, and also you need to put on your overheads using just a regular Fortic Bofa method. So for consistency and maintaining prayer, I'd say it's never really worth doing Fortic. This simple 5-tick T-bow method that everyone, I hope, is familiar with is easy and it conserves prayer. This isn't a speedrun guide after all, and it's just more consistent, and it does not really waste a whole lot of time. Do watch out though, you might be familiar with Fortic, and having that familiarity, you'll want to rush your attack, but Ice Demon hits over 50 off prayer, so try not to rush these kind of attacks. You can use the noise. I use the noise that of your arrow hitting Ice Demon to know when to click back. If you happen to die, it's not too bad. It's still pretty early in the raid. You'll generally have to respawn your Thrall a second time. One of the main reasons to use your Thrall and waste a prayer here is because the enhance and the flicking allow you to spawn twice, and you'll still have a ton of prayer left. If you're good at conserving prayer, you can always do the Fortic method. I'm not saying it's you're gonna run out at Vanguards, but you do have to be good at conserving prayer at Vanguards in order to just run around the room or walk around the room and Fortic. It's up to you to make that decision. I prefer to Fortic, but I suggest not to, especially if you're learning. No preps. So for Shamans, I did a couple of markers. Of course, there's no real difference between this and any other method. Bofa doesn't make a difference, really. But again, to conserve prayer, I marked a jump and a safe tile. So these are just the tiles you stand on, so you can safe spot Shamans. Again, it loses some ticks, like right now. You're not attacking during this, but it's just easier and it preserves valuable prayer. You can also use different safe spots. These are just the ones I like. I will point out though, it's important you lure this color. Like these shamans have different colors. It's important you take this shaman first, because the other one, like this one, can actually see you in that safe spot if you have lured the other one. The second shaman cannot see you, like, he can't reach you. So he won't accidentally move over and start attacking. No, I didn't really manage to get a jump out of the second shaman, so I just went ahead and killed it without even trying anymore. I did a lot of damage anyway. Time-wise, we're doing pretty well. 9 minutes is about the average if you're not getting particularly lucky or unlucky. If you get a 1 anvil Tekton, you can definitely go for a 7-minute floor 1. It's rare, but it's possible, especially if you bring Spellbook Swap and only one brew. But again, this is for consistency, not for speedrunning. So time-wise, we're all right. Nothing great, but nothing bad either. I switched my Scythe into Slash, back from Crush on Tekton. And I also used this time running to reorder my inventory. And you can also sip a brew dose because you're not DPSing while going to Vanguards. Also, it's really nice to change your quick prayers to magic plus rigor, so we can one-tick flick the major in Vanguard's room. This is very helpful. So Vanguard's is a very complex room, but you can get used to it. So you start off in Bofa, you can get off 4 attacks on the major. Then the the ranger afterwards, but you melee the ranger with ideally 1 claw and a scythe. But last raid I clawed into Scythe and insta reset them, so I just passed on the claw this time. Those 3 yellow tiles that I've marked near all of their spawn locations, they aren't too important. The yellow tile you see in the northeast, however, and the blue tile beyond that all the way east, you can't really see it right now. Yeah, that yellow and blue tile in the northeast, those are safe spots for the meleeer. I also show off the western safe spot right here for the meleeer using those 2 tiles. On that one, you want to make sure you insta-set it up, or the major can see you from the north if you dwindle too long on that first tile marked C. For the ranger, you can walk under him for 1-to-1 scything, and you can also avoid the first ranger hit this way. This is quite helpful, and you should really learn to do this. The major does the most damage this way. Like, the ranger doesn't do a lot. There's not much you can do against the major because you don't have a T-bow, so 1-to-1 Bofa wouldn't do anything. You can't, like, walking under the major wouldn't help. And make sure that you take advantage of the fact that the major and the meleeer can't see you when you farcast them, and so you can do more hits versus them hitting you. If you stand right next to them, they'll instantly see you, and you won't get a free hit in. It's a small difference, but it is nice to always start off with either the meleeer or either the ranger. If you start the cycle off with the major, he will instantly see you. The meleeer will, but you can safe spot him on every side. The ranger, if you do it correctly, won't instantly see you, you can walk under him. The major, however, he'll instantly see you every time. So it's nice to start DPSing down the major when you're on another side, so you can do a free hit. These are like really small details, but they do help. I messed up this cycle. I should not have risked that. But you'll see my solution to this problem is pretty good. And I managed to avoid all melee damage. That was just really risky. But yeah. Kind of a challenging room to learn, but it's pretty rewarding once you can do it in only 1 brew. As you can see, I only used 1 brew. You might be wondering why bring a second one if you can do it in only 1 brew, because that second brew is going to be very helpful for the rest of the raid. And actually, it'll keep me alive on this raid because I made some mistakes later on. So in this raid, I got a lot of supplies. It's perfectly fine if you get less supplies, but the only issue is if you do not get a single restore. Still doable, but you'll have to manage prey really well on floor 3 and Ulm. Generally, floor 1 and floor 2 require 0 restores, and floor 3 requires 3 or 4 doses. Olm can be done in 4 doses with good flicking during mage and melee phase. The secret and most important element, however, to the Bofa no prep is finding the bats during thieving. Don't be arrogant and ignore this part. It wastes time, but it's crucial to consistent deathless no preps. If you don't get the bats, you will die occasionally and lose a heap of points in the long term. So use the Bat Finder plugin in the plugin hub, and you spend some time getting those 5 bats. Those 5 bats are over 100 HP, and it's of incredible value. Now, once you're done with Thieving Room, you're going to want to gear up for the rest of the raid until Ulm. Sadly, because of these bats take inventory space, you're going to have to re-gear again after Rope. So it's not too important to get everything you need in this thieving chest, but you do want to make a habit out of doing the same thing every time so that you don't forget anything. And I actually opted to ditch the occult for Mutadol, which of course is still a while down the road, but in this chest is where I decided I won't bring the occult. I really shouldn't have. Occult prevents damage taken, and you should have enough room if you make the correct decisions at these chests to bring enough food for Mutadol, even if he does a lot of damage. So you can see me here making some decisions, ditching the occult and bringing the necessary gear for floor 3. The important thing is that you have 4 tiles open for Vaspula. 4 free spots is ideal. And bring at least 1 food and, of course, your Phoenix necklace, a stamina, an overload, and an enhance. And just, of course, regular gear, melee gear as well. You can see I have more open spots, but you do need 4. Now for Vaspula, I use a tick counting plugin. I don't know if this is allowed. It's not like anything special. It just counts your enhanced ticks, but you don't need it. Most people won't have this, and so you should wait until you actually see your prayer go up before clicking the Vaspula portal. Don't risk it. It might look like I'm risking my enhanced sticks, but I know exactly when the prayer will go up. Also, after every redemption proc, you want to turn off your prayer to make sure it won't go down still after the enhanced stick. It's kind of a bug where your prayer goes down after your redemption hits. And you'll see it happening sometimes to me as well. But yeah, just stay aware of that potentially happening. Also, if you happen to mess up and end up below 9 HP, don't risk it. Turn on your redemption at the safe spot and just click your orb. It's quite nice that or you can just eat a food, but it's better to just click your orb so you don't waste food. Don't risk it. 8 HP or under can kill you, and you lose the entire raid if it does. Or at least you'll probably die again later on, because Vaspula can poison you. But yeah, I don't think I made any real mistakes during this Vaspula. It just happens that using an enhance doesn't allow you to 4-tick Vaspula, sadly. But it's fine. So if you had exactly 4 free inventory spots, you will want to make sure you equip your pickaxe and your defender, so you have another free spot open for the rope crystal. Aside from that, we're doing rope skip, so I'll refer to Molgoat Kirby's Kirby Skip guide. No real reason to re-explain the method. It's pretty straightforward to understand if you watch his video. Gotta make sure that those 3 clicks happen in the same tick. Other than that, it's not too difficult. So, after that, you can drink a dose of Restore, but do not waste any food after Rope Skip. It's a complete waste for Guardians. You don't need high HP for this room, and you will lose that HP at Vasa anyway. Now, banking-wise, I suggest to bring a staff and an occult. Drop the rest of your magic gear, drop your hammer, drop your scythe, drop your Dragon Slayer 2 orb, obviously, and also don't bring a 4-dose stamina. Just bring the 2-dose or maybe 3-dose that you have remaining. Also, only bring one full restore. You should have at least one from Vaspula, even if Vanguards didn't drop any. And bring all of your remaining bats. There should be 4 of them left. The remaining spots that are open should be filled with brews, as you see in the footage. Now, I messed up and didn't bring an occult. I also only brought a 3-dose restore, but that's just because I already sipped 1 dose right after rope. So I'll be perfectly fine on prayer for floor 3. Assuming keeping on prayer during Vasa and Mutadol at all times, and flicking Guardians and Mystics, 4 doses for the entire 3rd floor is more than enough. There's not much to be said about Guardians. They are straightforward. Don't take any unnecessary damage, and make sure to flick. You don't need to flick a lot during Guardians. It's more important that you flick during Mystics. But if you want to do floor 3 on a single restore, or even 3 doses of restore is very possible, yeah, flicking Guardians is important. I got 2 restores from Vanguards, so for me this isn't necessary, but it is actually helpful to only bring 1 restore just so you have more room for food. That's the real reason we only bring 1 restore, so we can really fill our inventory with brews and bats. So yeah, flicking here is somewhat important, I'd say. Now, for Vasa, after the teleport, you want to click both a bat and a brew. 1 bat alone can work, but isn't fully secure, and you can still die if you get unlucky. And really not worth cheaping out on just 1 extra brew dose. It also gives you some leeway for mistakes. Now, I got shafted pretty hard by my overload heal here, so I actually had to eat more than that. Or I should have eaten more than that, is what I should say. And I'm only putting myself on 14 HP. It's pretty risky, but that's just unlucky with the overload heal. The odds are that you will really only overeat 1 brew dose, since Vasa will probably teleport you twice in total, so that 2nd time it doesn't matter to stay low HP. And so this general 1 extra overeat is 100% worth it. You will save yourself from death multiple times if you do 1 bat plus 1 brew dose. The fight itself is pretty much the same as Blowpipe or Twisted Bow, except that it's 4 tick in your attack cycle. Movement is important, but it's not too different here. Not much to be said about the fight itself, except that you want to avoid the south wall for later on in Mutadol, even though it's a small detail. I'll actually forget this, and you can see that the tree has spawned already. So I went too close to the south wall, and I spawned the Mutadol tree, which is fine. It's you lose like 2 ticks or something. Doesn't really matter. And I do not have my prayer on at this time. It's very dangerous. Keep your prayer on at all times. So for after Vasa, you should be able to fit the 2 brews in your inventory, especially because you brought bats. So fit in those 2 brews, and you might even be able to fit in the Twisted Potion, which is really nice because it allows you to improve your stats when you're brewing down at Mutadol. It also, if you have any Twisted Potion left, could allow you to avoid overloading at Olmhead and instead just use the Twisted Potion. That's another potential safe option you have. So for Mystics, you want to put your Quick Prayers to Magic and Rigor. Lure the first Mystic to the Flower, and you can do some hits in between the lure, but it deals some extra damage to you while you're doing that, and I wouldn't recommend this. These two final rooms are already deadly enough, especially with the Bofa setup, so if this first Mystic does less damage to you and you aren't able to attack it, I think it's worth just hiding behind the flower for a little bit longer. Now, it's possible that this first Mystic is going to be is stuck behind a rock, in which case you should just fully ignore luring it and kill it normally. You will take more damage trying to unstick it and make it move away from the rock, so not at all worth. It should be said I misclicked a bit while luring the second and third Mystics, and I took a lot of extra damage for no reason. So yeah, Mystics are often underrated in their ability to ruin your no prep, or really ruin any CM if you get boxed to death. It happens more often than you think, and it also just makes Mutadol more dangerous if you waste supplies during Mystics. So try not to misclick. And just be more careful than I was while luring these. Beyond that, just one tick flick. It's pretty easy to do, and quite important so you can survive the third floor with only one restore. So I didn't do Vasa perfectly there, and I already spawned the tendrils. And I already spawned the tree as well. So I couldn't do the tendril skip. It's not a big deal. But it is worth just mentioning that tendril skip is pretty nice. And worth avoiding the south wall for it. So Small Mutadol, he hits over 50 with his range attack, and he is a complete troll. You really should have enough food if you did everything correctly, so don't risk anything. Make sure to stay about 50 HP or over. And also a small detail, don't attack Small Mutadol until you have actually touched the tree. The tree is more important than doing DPS. Now, my lack of occult is pretty noticeable here, and I also take a lot of unnecessary damage because the fight just lasts longer. So normally you should take less damage and the fight should be a bit quicker than what I'm dealing with right now. But again, we have enough food to deal with this, so just keep on brewing if you're under 50. You can also wear your Infernal Cape to increase your defense a little bit. It's a small difference, but it also increases your magic accuracy. Now, when Small Mutadol is dead, pray Magic and pray Rigor. Now, that Magic Prayer should only be on for a couple ticks before the big Mutadol comes out of his swamp. Equip your ranged gear and pick up both potions, and then you can start ranging the big Mutadol. I think big Mutadol through prayer hits exactly 38. But the issue is you'll often find yourself at exactly 38 HP because of back-to-back tick eats. That's 2 tick eats of 19 HP, which comes together to 38. Now, I wouldn't tick eat at 38 HP, and instead I would either go for a restore or a twisted potion, because it's important to maintain the balance between tick eating and restoring your stats during Big Mutadol. If he happens to hit 38 as you're on 38 HP, honestly, just take the death. Big Mutadol can just kill you at any point in time. for no reason other than RNG, even if you do everything correct. So I think it's worth risking that. And if he happens to walk past your safe spot, pray melee and be ready to eat the stomp while you run to the other side. It's fine to pray melee because you can just eat the ranged attack anyway. Now for Olm, I'd say 2 restores is enough. I don't think I had enough brews, so instead of the extra brew, I brought a 3rd restore. But it's definitely enough to have 2 restores. You can also bring Scythe for final hitting a hand and making the start of every phase tick perfect. Now, it's not necessary though. Scythe is not very important. Lance will carry you through the fight easily. Olm itself isn't any different from other chambers. Now I'd say 7 to 3 or just full-on scything isn't really worth it because the DPS barely better, and on 0 hammers it's actually worse. Plus you take a ton of extra damage, and you'll probably often die if you scythe on no preps. In full Inquisitor, the lance is just incredibly strong as well. So sticking to your lance 4 to 1 is the go-to option for these type of raids. You also want to make sure you thrall twice every mage phase, or if you're really fast, you can get away with only using 1 thrall on a mage phase, but you'll generally have to thrall twice. And once more at the start of the melee phase. Now, if you happen to only have 1 revitalize potion, probably due to Vanguards not dropping a single one, you can opt for 1 mage thrall and 0 melee thralls. That means the end of the mage hand you won't have a thrall, and during the entire melee hand you also won't, well, during the entire 3 melee hands you also won't have any melee thralls. This is less DPS, but it is 36 prayer points in total saved, plus you'll still take almost full advantage of the mage thrall avoiding taking hits while maging, keeping the head moving, except perhaps all the way at the end of the mage hand phase. But that's kind of a balancing act you'll want to do while having to deal with only having 1 revitalization potion. During this fight, I'll also be flicking more than I need to, especially I think in the second phase. I'll be flicking a little more than I need to. The reason is because I just wanted to show off what you can do to save prayer if you happen to have very little prayer potions. So yeah, even on only 1 restore, you should be okay if you don't make any big mistakes. The flicking is kind of annoying, but it's doable. Another thing you can do is flick your crystal armor in between melee hits for some extra defense, especially mage defense. Worth doing 100%, but I was just a little bit lazy on that front. And it should be said, it was really cold in my room at the time of recording, and I wasn't really up to doing fast clicks. So, but flicking your crystal armor is quite nice if you do it in between your melee hits. When it comes to stamina, 4 doses is enough for Olm. Now 5 doses is comfortable, and in the huge majority of my CMs, I have 5 doses of stamina potion. This is also why we bring a stamina dose pre-pot after Tekton. If you had to use a 2nd stamina at Vaspula, you can opt to either risk the 4 dose Olm, or only use 1 dose during or after Vasa instead of 2. Now that would mean if you had a bit of a slower Vasa, you would have to walk to Mystics, which is rare that this occurs, that you have a slow Vaspula and You also need to use 2 doses at Vasa, but it is definitely possible. It's rare because of the Tekton pre-pot, meaning that you won't need to use a single of your 2 stamina or your two full stamina potions during the first floor. So that rare occasion, though, can still happen, and it really is nicer to ensure a 5 stamina dose Olm and just walking a bit until you reach Mystics. That's not to say that 4 dose is impossible. You can definitely do an Olm on 4 doses of stamina potion, but I would suggest against doing 4 to 0 if that is the case. Now, for the third phase, you can choose to do 4 to 0. And since I just told you it's a bad idea to try this if you only have 4 stamina doses for all, but 5 doses perfectly allows this, and it won't risk your run energy depleting. The other variables are prayer and HP on whether you choose to 4 to 0 or not. So for prayer, you just can't flick as well doing 4 to 0. And in general, you'll also just have less DPS with 4 to 0, but that's not a huge deal, I'd say. But you could turn off your prayer entirely during 4 to 0, making your third phase completely supply free, except for your stamina. So it's another balancing act to make your decision on whether to 4 to 0 or not. This raid I chose not to, and I don't think it was a great idea because I obviously could do it. I have 3 doses left at this point. I have more than enough prayer to just keep my prayer on at all times, and my food is looking all right, but you will see that it gets a little bit tricky near the end. So that's just to say that I chose not to 4 to 0 and regularly kill the melee hand, but it's somewhat of an unnecessary risk. The safe route is to go 4 to 0 and complete your raid with a ton of brews left. You might think these 3.75 brews that I have left are enough, but head phase is just horrible with a Bofa, and I would argue you need at least 3 brews to comfortably do head phase, and allow yourself to make some mistakes here and there. So when it comes to head phase, it is honestly an absolute killer on Bofa raids, especially if you don't have a Dragon Hunter crossbow, which you could bring in exchange for a different item. Definitely not a bad idea to do so. I just chose to get used to the Bofa and use it on head phase. But yeah, you'll want at least 3 full brews. And there are a couple of decisions to make when it comes to head phase, and none of them are great. Now, either you take lots of hits and do full damage, or you can also just do the regular 5-tick crossbow and T-bow method, but you do less damage because of slower attack speed. Or you do the 4 to 1 method, which I'll end up showing off on the second half of the fight, but then you'll take a ton of crystals. So no matter what you do, you can do 4 to 2, which means full damage, but you take 1 hit every side. You can do 5 to 1, slower damage. Or you can do the 4 to 1 method that I'm going to show, but that takes crystals. You can avoid crystals more effectively than what I did on head phase, but it's honestly really difficult to see where exactly they'll land. So I suggest just eating through them and pretending like they're not there. Now, if you end up in a real pickle, you can always just do 2-0, but you will need 2 stam doses for 2-0 head phase, since the Bofa just does not do a lot of damage at all. You can see me here starting off the fight with 4-2. I'm transitioning into... I ripped a chance there. I'm transitioning into 4-1, but it's not easy. And then he gives me some acid, so I just decide to run it off a little bit. It's better to stay safe. I also really needed to heal there anyway. But yeah, you can see how much damage he does, and he just won't stop switching prayers or switching attack styles, so it's pretty deadly. So I had more than 3 brews left, and it's still really tough on the supplies. But I finally managed to get into the 4-1 correctly, and from that point out, it's pretty smooth sailing. As long as you brew enough, don't stay low HP, because even if you tick eat his attacks correctly, you can still get killed by Falling Crystal. So staying high HP is of the utmost importance. And I think to finish the raid, we're going to clock in at about 40 minutes. A little over 40 minutes, so pretty decent. The Grandmaster time is 38 minutes 30. Most people cannot get it with Bofa. I got it in about with a minute saved, but it was with a different strategy than this. I was not using save strategy at all. I don't think you'll get Grandmaster with this strategy, but still, 40 minutes is pretty good for a Bofa raid. Thank you for watching, and good luck trying this out.